5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Jeff from Junior Hockey Advisor. Sunday night, time to start talking a little bit about hockey. Got a great crowd already going. I see that we've been fluctuating between 20 and 30. It always goes that way because people don't know exactly what time we start, even though we tell everybody 9 o'clock. Okay, we've got a lot tonight, mostly on one subject, but I'm going to add a second subject because I think it's pretty good. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. We've got such a different audience as it keeps growing. We've just in our Facebook discussion group, just in that one group alone, the month of August, I should say from the 13th to the 13th, 12th to the 12th, whatever you want to look at, we've had a 500-person growth in that period of time. We had a little contest in there, but the growth started before that for a few weeks and has continued this last week too. So we've got just a tremendous group of people. So I should tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about what we do. Once again, the name's on there. It's Colson. I know it looks like Colcon. You can pronounce it any way you want, but it is pronounced Colson when I say it, okay, or when my family says it. I've been in this for 35 years. I'm a master certified coach. I have 2 master's degrees. One is in education and one is in business and MBA. So I've kind of fused that, and I've got an extensive broadcast background too, both in radio and TV. So I've kind of fused all these things together with my passion, which is hockey. I've been a junior owner. I've been a NCAA coach. I've done a lot of things in hockey. So I've kind of used this platform to kind of give you a no BS, here's how it works approach to the game and how things are done. So hopefully tonight you'll get a little bit of that. You'll feel a little bit of that. Junior Hockey Advisor, we are not a representative service. We don't represent players. We're not an agency. We're not a family advisor service. We're purely content, education, okay? A lot of, and the majority, 90% of the things we do is a free content page. The rest of it, there is some paid content that is on our website, juniorhockeyadvisor.com. You can go on there for coaching calls. You can go on there for webinars for different topics. However, this show is all about what you want. And the big push this week was more information about online service, online websites, online usage. What can you do to get better and understanding the process? Remember, this is not a skills and drills coach's site. I have a lot of appreciation for that. I've done that, for the majority of my life. This is really about parents and players and coaches and advisors learning more about the process, learning about the statistical analytics behind where players come from, learning the reality of how things work, and that's what we do. So that's what we're going to spend some time on tonight, is utilizing one particular website, and that is Elite Prospects. We're going to look at Elite Prospects. We're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about what Elite Prospects can do for you and what you can do to utilize that service, okay? And hopefully we can dispel some myths about what Elite Prospects is, and we can talk about what things you can do to take advantage of Elite Prospects. It's a great site, but we're going to talk about one thing first before we get around to Elite Prospects. First of all, I want to say hi to a few people. I see Dave Kennedy in Denver. I see my cousin Jeannie in Flint. I see Scott calling in from Scott Carmody calling in from Sioux Falls, or watching from Sioux Falls. We've got Toronto. We've got Connecticut. We've got West Seneca, which is only about an hour and a half down the road from where we're at. And let's see who else we've got here. That's about it for now. Please keep checking in. Remember, a couple things. The Junior Hockey Advisor discussion group, we have 24 different pages and groups that pick up the show. If you're watching this on a recorded version, you can always stay there. That's a great site. I'm not trying to take anybody away from wherever you're getting other information from, but our Junior Hockey discussion group is awesome. But if you go to Junior Hockey Advisor and you sign up there, make sure you go over to the Junior Hockey Advisor page and like and follow that too. because we put content on the Junior Hockey Advisor page that doesn't always show up on the discussion group, and vice versa. So you want to make sure that you like and follow that page too. A couple more people coming in. Connecticut's coming in, and we see Massachusetts coming in. Paul, I don't know if you pronounce that Gomes or Gomez, but I see you, and I notice you got a question. We're going to get specifically your question, Paul. Thank you so much. And Scott, I don't know where the heck is Marvici at. I'm going to have to look that up on my maps in a little bit to figure out where that's at. So before we get to any of that, okay, before we get around to any of that at all, I want to talk about this thing, okay? First of all, I believe it or not, I work out frequently. And one of the things that drives me nuts, especially now that the YMCA, first of all, we got this YMCA in Rochester and Pittsford. It's about an eighth of a mile. It's a driver and a 4-iron away from me, okay? It's walkable. It's a Taj Mahal of all YMCAs. 3 floors, big atrium, like a Starbucks on the first floor, just an incredible place. The problem is that, unless you're working out outside with them, like a class outside, if you go inside and use any of their equipment, you got to wear a mask. So I was wearing a mask, or I was wearing a bandana, and I was just totally sopping the mask. Then I was freaking waterboarding myself, just like I was back in the military. I felt like I was a prisoner of war. I'm getting waterboarded where I'm sucking in all that, and just I'm coughing and gagging. It was terrible. It was terrible. How are you supposed to work out like that? So my wife solved the problem. This mask, this little mask here, you can probably see through it. Yeah. You can actually see through it. But it's actually double fibered. And I get, this is not an advertisement. I'm trying to help you out. I'm trying to give you a little advice. Take it or leave it. It's free. But the outside is mesh. The inside is a thinner mesh. Okay, so you got 2 different meshes there. But I'm going to show you the site. And if you're interested in this, I just want you to have the information because it is breathable. The other thing about it is you can actually wipe it down with a cloth, and it's dryable, so it doesn't get soppy wet. If you get some moisture, some perspiration inside of it, you just wipe it off. You just take and wipe it down, and it almost virtually dries instantly. So it's a nice mask. There's no real compliance on this. I don't want you to go on there and say that this is the mask that's going to stop all diseases. I'm only talking about a practical mask for working out or skating and the people that are required to wear them. If you're looking to comply with having a mask, this may be for you. And I want to show you the site. I'm going to pull that up right now. Let me do that so you can see that. It's called Esty. This is from my wife, so. And it's called the Running Cooling Mesh Mask. Now, they got a ton of masks on there, but this is the one that I liked. And they're a little expensive, I think, for 3 of them. We spent probably close to $50 for 3 of them. But my son's been wearing it. He's an athlete. My wife wears hers, and I wear mine too. So I think they're pretty good masks. Once again, I don't get paid by Esty. If they want to sponsor me, I'll take it, but they don't. And just thought I'd share that with you. I thought it was pretty cool. And once again, a breathable mask. So take it for what it is. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, okay, that's fine too. So tonight's topic, once again, elite prospects. Let's set the stage a little bit about elite prospects, and then I'm going to jump right in. The questions were coming in from it's confusing to, what do I do for it? How do I sign up for it? We're going to try to cover as much of that as we can. Don't forget, you can, as you're checking in there from all over the place, don't feel afraid to, or don't be afraid to ask a question. Ask it live. I'll try to jump on the questions live as they come in. And hey, Louise from Riverside, probably our most loyal person is Riverside, California. Thanks for jumping on, Louise. We've got an awesome crowd tonight. This is one of our larger ones. I think I've told you this before. We don't usually get a large crowd on the actual broadcast. We get, probably 200 people come and go during the broadcast. But during the rebroadcast, we're up to 6, 8, 10,000 views, depending on which week it is. So it's a blast to see how much this goes. But I'm really trying to grow the live audience too. I'd like to see that. take off to Chicago coming in, Tampa coming in. Great to see you all here once again. Feel free to tell me where you're from. Feel free to ask a question. So let's jump in to tonight's topic, elite prospects. Let's see what we can do, and let's see if we can figure some things out for everybody. So let's jump on, and we'll get out of that screen, and we'll go right into elite prospects. So what I want to point out right off the bat is with elite prospects, here we go. Let's only worry about the top where it says stats, teams, leagues. And you know what you might want to do? You might want to listen to me and have a second, open up a second screen and actually play around while you're working with this. That might work. And if it doesn't work, that's fine too. But that might help a little bit. So we're going to talk. Now, I'm signed up for the premium or premier, whatever they're calling it, and I pay like $9. But I'm on this site, quite a bit. We'll talk about if it's worth it to sign up or not. But you got stats, teams, leagues, nations, awards, free agents, draft center, and drafts. Now, you would think that everything over from after stats, teams, and leagues, when you get into the last four categories there, five categories, nations, awards, free agents, draft center, and drafts, you'd think that those things are all for pros. And for the most part, there are. Let's just look at the screen you're looking at. Well, you can't even see what I'm talking about on my screen, so I gotta pull this down a little bit. Sorry about that. I can see it, but you can't, so let's fix that. It'll just take me a second to shrink this down a second. I've got to go and pull this whole thing down. Okay, so there we go. Now you can see what I see. Okay, so on the top there, stats, teams, leagues, nations, awards, free agents, and draft center. That's what we're going to talk about for the most part. But let's look at the rest of that screen, and let's look what is you get right away. Now, right away you see that you've got something that's pretty interesting up there. Right here, if you can see where my mouse is, I don't know if you can or not. I don't believe you can. But on the top right-hand corner, it says database. And right now there's 792,000 players in the database. 792,207. Okay, and the last person added was Trinity Lemieux. Okay, now it even has little things for birthdays on there, and it's got scoring leaders. It's got all kinds of information on the left-hand side there. But that really isn't what we need. In fact, this first screen here, yes, we could go down here and we could pull up and we could look at the teams in North America. And what's interesting here is that first column, you got all your professional teams, which is nice. Then you've got your junior teams, and you've got your tier 1, your tier 2, your tier 3 teams. And then you've got your AAU, which is the Western States League. Then here's where all your 18s are that are represented by leagues. There's your 18 leagues that are represented, your 16 leagues, and your 15 leagues that are represented. So that goes all the way down to 14, and you see them prep and independents below that. Now, when you get over into Canada, Canada's broken into 3 categories: West, Central, which is Ontario, and East. So like the CJHL, we've talked about the CJHL before. The CJHL is made up of 10 leagues. But on this site, the CJHL is actually broken into Junior A West, and then it's broken into Junior A Central, which is Ontario, Canada, Ontario, and then it's broken into East. So your Junior A still adds up to 10. They just break them into regions for you. Then your Junior Bs all come in underneath there for the Western Junior B, which you can see there's a ton of junior hockey on the West. And Junior B is not so big in the Ontario market. I should say not as big, but the leagues are a little bit bigger, but less actual leagues. And then you see some on the East too. So that's the way it works in that screen, but let's not really worry about that. That's not where we want to start. What we want to do is we want to start up at the top, and we want to start under the stats button. So I'm going to hit stats. Whoops. And on the stats page, it still gives us the same thing. We go down here and we get the same information, but we want to work under the premise that we are looking for a player right now. And I just want to show you how looking for a player and looking a player up matters, because one of the questions that came up is, what does a coach look for? So I'm going to put Smith in, and I don't know what I'm going to get. I'm going to try to grab a recent Smith Maybe Smith is too common of a name. Probably should have put Hughes in. In fact, I will. I'm going to put Hughes in because there's a couple different levels of Hugheses. Okay, so I just put Hughes in, and I'm looking for one of the it doesn't matter. I'll grab Ben Hughes. He's a 99. Now I want to use a more recent player. Where are all the Hughes brothers at? Why aren't the Hughes kids showing up here? It doesn't matter. I'll tell you what. I'll pull up a league, and then I'll pull a player up from the league. So let me go back up the top. I'll just grab a team. So if I go into the team area here, and believe me, this will get interesting in a second. Just bear with me. Let's go to the USHL. So I'm going to pull up the USHL, and if I scroll down the USHL, you can see all the teams in the USHL. Now, here's an interesting thing. I just pulled up the USHL as a league. So I went into teams, I hit USHL, and it pulls up all the teams inside of the USHL. Now, since all the rosters have not been set yet, if you look over on the far right column, you don't have full rosters yet. There's only been a few teams that have populated and entered rosters yet, but that's common. That this is the time of year. But if we go into the Chicago Steel, and usually you'll see the Steel in the debut team leading the way on most things administrative. They're very, very well managed programs. But let's just grab the Steel, and I'll show you some things about the team, and then I'll talk about the players too. So on the Steel roster, now we got to be careful here because this is this year's roster. Now it breaks down into two things. It gives you roster, which we're on now, and it gives us stats. If we go to stats because they haven't played a game yet, we get nothing on this screen. But what I can do is I can go right below that to past statistics, and I can click into the 1920 season. Bingo, right there like that. Now I've got the stats from last year. So I can actually look at this and break it down into anything I want to off of here. If I want to look at goals and I want to sort by goals on that team, assists, total points, penalty minutes, plus minus, I can sort any of these categories. So once again, let's start with the player, and I'm just going to grab a player and see if there's here's a name I know. Let's pull up Owen here. So here's Owen Power. You notice right off the bat his Chicago Steel pictures there, but you notice that he's got a University of Michigan, and it says Michigan 2021 because he's already rostered for the University of Michigan. If you scroll down onto his information, you'll see that he was on the Chicago Steel last year. That's the roster we were looking at, and that he is committed to the University of Michigan here. Now, here's his history of from 15 to 16, and then juniors, 2 years of juniors, and then on to the University of Michigan. This is an elite player. He played for the in the Worlds at the 17 level. He's got a good resume. So now I can look at a couple other things. Number one, I can look and see what else he's done. This right here is tournaments and statistics. This is usually things you see that are not league related. So OHL Cup. If you're an American or a Canadian, it's your national team, select camps. It's anything you do to represent your team. And there's other tournaments that are in there too. This is where you'll find the BRIC. This is where you'll find the Pee Wee Quebec tournament. And the reason why you'll see those two things is they're considered prestigious, and statistically they do make sense, especially for younger players. A player that's 10 or 12, and a coach is looking at 14s and 15s. They're closer together. The dynamics make more sense to look at what they've done in their past. Doesn't probably make sense to worry about the BRIC once you get up to the junior level, but the history does make sense. After that, you get the game log. Now, here's some interesting information because you can look and see how he's done game to game. You can see if he runs his points up in a game that, like the 10-3 game, he only had an assist, so he's not pumping points in lopsided games. He's got a good, steady history of points across the board. The next category down, if you scroll down a little bit, it will actually show you all the different levels he's played at. So he's played GTHL, the Greater Toronto Hockey League, 15 and 16, only 1 year in each of those. In fact, it doesn't even show his 15 games. It shows his 16 games, But go over to the PPG category. And this is what's important because this is one of the things that coach will look at right away, especially with forwards. They'll grab it and say, can he maintain or has he maintained the same level of scoring and the same ability to produce points as he's moved up the ladder? Or has it been relatively, is it better than most? Is he keeping up with the Joneses? Does he exceed, or does he at least maintain his same point production? So if you look on here, when he was in 16s, he was putting up a point a game. That's pretty good. You go in to see what he did for the national program when he was in the OJC, half a point a game. OHL Cup, 0.6 a game. He went to the USHL, 0.63. So yes, he's maintained and maybe even done a little bit better. But nobody would expect what you did at U16 and the GTHL to be the same thing you're doing in the USHL, different game. Now, the next thing you'll see is this EP score, mostly for pros where they actually break down. Because remember, this site, it's a database. Nothing more, nothing less. The site is a database. So if you're looking at this for vanity purposes, it's not, okay? Coaches, now I'm gonna qualify this or quantify this, whatever you want to say. Qualify probably is better. Qualify this by saying, yes, coaches come on here all the time. I just saw a comment from one of the coaches in the USHL that said, hey, I spent all weekend going down different rabbit holes on elite prospects, and you do have only so many searches you can do before it limits your searches before you go to premium. So be careful on just going and playing on it, because you can lock yourself and lose things unless you're on the premium site. But this EP score, Connect score, that's for pro players. Some people use this for fantasy leagues at the NHL level and for their higher level. And so knowing about salaries and knowing about points per game and rating players on all their different areas makes sense, but it's not used at the amateur level, and it's not used for anything else. Now, the next session is awards by season. So if you look at this section here, you'll see anything he's done as far as awards. So he was an all-rookie second team. He was a defenseman of the year, USHL first team all-star, and USHL most points by defenseman. So this guy has got it going across the board. This is a pretty good resume across the board. Now, here's the next one that's interesting. Now, if we drop down to his transactions can show you a lot of stuff. Transactions can show you trades. It can show you movement. It can show you, the transaction section will show you when you were actually picked up and drafted. Actually, the bio right below that picks up your drafts. But trades and commitments show up here. So he committed back when he was a U16. So that's important to know when you're looking and shopping and figuring out what teams you're looking at. Remember what I talk about, you reverse engineer. You start at the college you're interested in, you figure out where all those players came from, the younger you are, that is, and then you work your way backwards. So in his case, we say, hey, look, I want to go to the University of Michigan. This player went to the University of Michigan. Let's reverse engineer him. So if we reverse engineered his career, we just go back up here and say, how did he get to Michigan? Well, he got to Michigan through the USHL. How did he get to the USHL? From the GTHL at U16s. Well, the GTHL is a premium league. It's an elite league. The U16, U15 levels in the GTHL are extremely strong teams. You can look those up on My Hockey and do your homework there. But this gives you an idea. So if you're a 12, 13, or 14-year-old player and you say, I want to go to Michigan, and you start looking, and you're a defenseman, you start looking at what the other defensemen are doing or where they're from, it's going to help you get a sense, are you in the right place, and can you play at that level? So this is a incoming freshman at the University of Michigan. You can see what it takes to get there. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of just the player breakdown across the board. Now remember, down on the bottom here, the other thing too is, and this is where coaches will go. They'll go and they want to see what you've done. They'll also go in here and see, if you've been traded, especially if you're a junior player. And this is important because this is where they get questions answered. Now, this type of player, he's had a microscope on him for years. You drop down a little bit, you can see that he was drafted in the first round, 7th overall by the Chicago Steel. They kept him, but he was also drafted in the second round by the Flint Firebirds in the OHL. Obviously, he went the USHL route, so that didn't really matter there. So that kind of gives you a breakdown on players. Now, I want to show you a couple other things because one of the questions that came in, and this question came in from this one came in from Jacob Dolan. And Jacob's been a recent winner of our one of our contests for having the most people that he's involved. He asked the question, is this like LinkedIn? Can I tell how many people are looking at me? Can I tell how many people see me? Or does it give me any feedback on that? Well, yeah, it does in a way, but not in the same way you think. If you go up in the top here at the very top of the page and you see that little eyeball there right next to the print sign, right there, what that does is it tells you how many times people have looked at you and looked at your site. And if you click on it, you can go down and you can see who the top people that are being looked at in the views. So we can see overall, Connor McDavid is clearly the most looked at player. He's got 1.7 million views on this site. Sydney's right behind him, and then you get into the Nylanders and the Hughes. There's Hughes. I'll pull him up because we can learn a lot from Hughes too. So anyway, yes, you can. Now, before we do that, let me go back because I want to show you something else. This is where you got to be careful on this because, yes, you can see that this player that we're looking at right now, Owen Power, has 54,000 views of his Elite Prospects page. Okay, that's pretty cool, 54,000. So what does an average player have? An average player, if you're AA and you're on here, you're going to have how many times you've looked at it, okay, for the most part. As you get into the junior ranks, you'll start getting some. Now, here's where you use that. And Jacob, to answer your question a little bit about this is when you pull up your site, you should pull it up no more than once every 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe once a month is about all you should be looking at this because you want to keep that number where you can maintain that number and know what that number is. So let's say I had 54 people look at my site. I send out 30 emails to college coaches or 30 emails to junior coaches. Then after I send those emails out, maybe 24, 48 hours, I want to pop back on and see how many look at them. Now, if that number goes up to 74 or 84, I go, hey, look, I'm getting some action. I'm getting some traction. They're looking at what I'm sending them. They're looking at some of the information. Just like on YouTube, when I put that video up on YouTube, my little 30-second to 1 minute snippet of what great things I can do, I don't want to keep going back and looking at myself and running the number up. I want to keep that fresh so that when I look at it again and check on it after I send emails out, I can see if it's getting any traction. Meaning, I got to know if my emails are hitting home or not. I might not hear right away from the coaches, but I can go, oh, they looked at my Elite Prospects and they're looking at my video, okay? And then that way you can track and see if you're actually getting anybody looking at things. And it's always a good idea to do that. So that number right there is going to be much, much less. Most players at the junior ranks, if you're playing Tier 3, it's vanity, meaning the kids are usually looking at it themselves. Very few coaches are looking at the Tier 3 level until they're ready to be recruited. When you start getting into Tier 2 and Tier 1, remember some of these places, if you're playing in the USHL, the North American Hockey League, the BCHL, and some of the other CJHL programs, you're playing in front of a fan base, the fans will pull this up so that number gets skewed, it gets run up, you'll get into the thousands fairly easy while you're still in juniors because you'll have some people that'll be checking out your stats, especially if you're new to a team, you'll have a lot of the fans that'll go and check you out. And the more that fans find out about this pace, the better. So, okay, anyway, ask some questions. I've got a lot to cover on this, and we're just getting started, but I wanted to make sure you got through the first page. Remember at the top here, there's a few things and that I want to make sure you see. Birth date, age, place of birth, nation, height, weight, position. All those things are pretty common. If you're using a family advisor and the family advisor is represented on Elite Prospects, in other words, they're verified They can actually tell them, and they'll be on the line here, and I'll say who you're represented by. Usually, and I'm surprised that he's not, he's eligible for the 2021 NHL draft. Usually a player of this status will have a lot more information on here, and I'll pull up, I'll go back to Hughes for you, and we'll look at Hughes, and you can see that that's the case. All right, there's Jack Hughes. So if we look at Jack Hughes, you can see a few things on his site. Scroll down a little bit here. First of all, you can see where his cap hit is. This stuff gets added for the pros. His NHL rights, his draft round, and his agency. So creative artist agency. And folks, don't call creative agents art agency and say, hey, well, you want to represent my son. The ones that are representing these first round, second round draft picks, these are true agents. They're not family advisors, and it's a different ball of wax. It's not the type of family agency, family advisor agency you call. They'll come find you at that level. So don't worry about trying to call up creative agency, artist agency, but then you'll see something else. He gets his highlights. This is what he's won as far as any kind of medals. And then you go below that, there's usually a write-up. And this one actually comes from the scouting department of Elite Prospects, because there's two hats. Elite Prospects actually wears two or three. We're only talking about the database, okay? The database is where we at. But they also do rankings for pro players, and especially for the upcoming drafts, just like there's a few other sites that do the same thing. RinkNet, ISS, there's a few there's individuals that make a living off of just ranking prospects that go into the NHL draft. But if you notice here, a couple things. One is it shows his parents. Now, if I even click on his mom, you think, well, why would I worry about his mom? Well, there's a reason why. If you click on the mom, it pulls up that she was actually a player. She played women's hockey at the University of New Hampshire. So if there's family connections, a lot of times they'll show you. And in the Hughes situation, there's a ton of family connections, as you can see. He's got two brothers. Quinn is already a former University of Michigan player. He's playing for Vancouver. Most of you know that. Luke is an up-and-comer. He'll probably be there. But below that, so you can click on any of his family members and have the family member information come up. But below that, it kind of gives you a little bit of notations from all the different McKean's, future considerations, hockey prospect, EP, Rinkside, ISS. These are all the different draft ranking sites and scouts that actually are respected at the NHL level and what they have to say about them. You're not going to get this unless you're an NHL draft pick level player. Rarely, some D1 players may have gotten something written up on them early that stays on, even if they plateaued at D1. But this is not something you're going to see day to day. Now, just assume that if you've got a write-up like this, there's going to be an NHL draft number next to your name up here when you see where all the information up here is. Or in this case, he's already signed. He doesn't have to worry about his draft. He's already signed. So in the case here, the only reason I wanted to show you this, I wanted to show you the family connections, and that if there's family, even for players that are not at the NHL level, even if it's just two guys playing juniors, you can email or you can connect on the top of the page. There's a section here where you can actually reach out to EP and ask them to, you can go up into here, I believe it's, is it under my name? I can actually go in. Well, for me, it's premium settings. I'm not sure where it is now on the non-premium settings, but if I go under the premium settings, I can actually ask them to change things for me. Now, I can't change stats. Now, let's talk about that situation right now, and I think that's important that we discuss this for a second. Let me just get this off so it's not a distraction. We're not able to just jump on and say, hey, my son had a goal in that game, and then I'm going to call or I'm going to email or text or message Elite Prospects and say, hey, my son scored a goal. I want that information put on there. No. In fact, you might play 60 or 80 games in the year, and Elite Prospects only shows 20 or 30 of those games. And here's why. let's say I'm playing in the Beast. Let's say my team plays a bunch of exhibition games, 20 games exhibition, and then 20 games inside of the Beast, okay? Or Tier 1 Elite, or HPHL. You saw the list of different leagues that they're pretty much the ones that are monitored first. Now, if I'm playing in one of those leagues and I look at the thing, I said, my team's played 60 games. Why do they only have 20? Well, it's most likely because it's your league games, and it's the league that's reporting them. And in a lot of cases, like in the Tier 1 Elite, most of the systems are set up right in the penalty box, or right in the scorer's box, I should say, right at the timekeeper, and they're entering information that's virtually live now. That in many of the cases, it's stuff that gets punched right in on the league page, gets punched right in. It gets verified at the end of the game, and then boom, it's off to Elite Prospects, and Elite Prospects downloads that information. It happens fairly quickly. So the information you're getting exactly what was on the league stat sheet. It was coming off the score sheet from the league game. If there's an exhibition game, the only thing I can tell you in this situation is sometimes coaches will submit other stuff to Elite Prospect, but it's got to come through somebody that's been officially recognized. Elite Prospects is tight. They've got a security system, and they follow them on Twitter, because every once in a while they'll post something where they get another crazy parent, and they'll get parents that are so crazy that the parent will start their own website, build it out to look like it's a league website, list all of the teams on there with their records that are identical to what the real records are, and then list the stats, and then put their kids' stats much, much higher on this fake website. People will go to extremes, and you'll see this on Elite Prospects where they'll actually point this out and show you these situations. It's hilarious. Somebody will actually go to the extreme of building a whole website out to give their kid 20 points versus 10 or 15 points. So first of all, worry less about the stats and worry less about, unless things are egregious. If your name's spelled wrong, you want to give Elite Prospects a call. You want your picture up there. A lot of times the way your pictures get on there they're coming from a league photographer, they're coming from a showcase photographer, they're coming from a USHL prospect camp. I know my son, this is years ago now, but when he went to a USHL prospect camp, that USHL picture got posted on his Elite Prospects. So I know the North American Hockey League does the same thing. If you get a picture that's taken at one of these events, they'll most likely use that and populate with that. So to answer a couple of other questions, I'm going to hit a couple other that came up. The question is, Buzzy Beck. First of all, Buzzy, I'm still debating with that name if you should be a pool hustler, you should be a NASCAR driver. That is the coolest name ever. I've actually talked to Buzzy a few times on the phone and built a dialogue with him. I love the name. So Buzzy asked the question, define elite. No, I'm not going to define elite. Elite is the most subjective term that's used out there, and you should not look at this site as, because it's called Elite Prospects, that every single player on here is elite. Okay, first of all, none of our kids would be on here if they only put elite players on, because elite would probably be defined as anybody in the NHL. And then NHLers would say, well, no, that's not elite. It's only guys that make the all-star team. So we only want NHL all-stars on this site. So elite's relative. It's relative to your age. It's relative to where you're at in the game. It's relative to skill level. You can be elite at a squirt, peewee. You can be an elite midget. I don't care. Elite is relative, and it's not a term that I really think we have to worry about, because that's not the purpose of the site. The purpose of the site is to try to get data and to be a pushing off point for coaches to look at it. So I want to just clarify that. I don't want you getting confused with what elite is and what elite does. Everybody calls something elite in hockey these days, so I'm not too worried about that. Amherstburg, Ontario. Greg, good to see you coming in. Melissa, North Carolina, good to see you. Seattle's in the house. New Brunswick, Canada's in the house. Long Island in the house. Originally from Rochester. Interesting to see that. Let's see who else is coming in. Winston-Salem's in the house. British Columbia, Milwaukee, Orange County, California, Morris, Illinois, and Newfoundland. Well, we're getting the outskirts of Canada. That's good to see. Going coast to coast in Canada. Tampa's there. Chicago, Illinois is there. Hey, we got a great group coming. Kansas City once again. So last one in, Greg. Once again, if you're just coming on and jumping on, feel free to tell us who you are. So the next part of this I wanted to throw out, and the question's on your screen. You can see it right now. Is at what age do you set up an account? You don't. You don't have to worry about that. If you're playing at the level that Elite Prospect recognizes, they'll drop you into the system. Your team or your league will drop you in, or the showcase or the tournament that you're playing in. So I guess you could say there is a little bit of eliteness to this because they're going to populate the information. Now, if you really are insistent on getting your information populated, you would have to contact Elite Prospects. Let's say I'm playing AA in Montana, and I'm just making this up. If I'm playing AA in Montana, I say, hey, look, I've got to have an Elite Prospects profile page. Okay, you can send your information in, then you've got to send verifiable information in. What league, what your league website is, what your team website. They'll ask you for all kinds of things. So the more verifiable information you can give, it cannot be anything subjective. Okay, it's very difficult. I've tried in the past to get a few of the things on. I had a few pro games played when I was down in Florida. I have no way of verifying that information. There's no way to really grab old sheets from that far ago. So you can't get that data put on. Now, once in a while, it starts triangulating because it's funny. Some of the information starts coming out because some other player has a score sheet. He'll get that in as a guy that was on my team. And so all of a sudden now you can start building. It's some of the past history is very similar to building these historical genealogy lines back in your family where you need the pieces to all fall in place. And before they get online and they're published, they're verified from several different sources to make sure they're true. Same if you're trying to put information out as a parent. The idea is don't, unless you really feel it's necessary to do so. Now, with that said, another question that came in was, when do I need this? Okay, when once again, it's kind of a subjective question about when you need this. Elite Prospects is a database. So if you're in the database, then it's used when you can to utilize it. Now, every kid that is in the database should use it when he's looking to move to the next level. If I'm at U14 and I want to try out with a U15 team that's out of state, when I send them an email, I want to connect or actually add a link to my Elite Prospects page so that when they're reading the email, they just hit Elite Prospects and boom, they're up and running. They can see what the information's on there and they can utilize that. If I'm going from 16 to 18, 18 to junior, I always want to link to my Elite Prospects page and make sure that that information's going forward. Okay, so that's very, very important. So let me see if some of the live questions are coming on and see if I can answer a couple of these. Does Elite Prospects have database for multi-sport athletes? So, Caroline, that's a great question. There's a couple things. If you have something that's really, really interesting, you have the ability to go on and be under the premier level, the royal level, whatever the upscale $9 a month version is called. And you can actually put a note in and put a scouting note in and saying, hey, all-star football player, all-county football player. But I'd make sure that it was something. If you're just playing other sports, that's a given. Most people are going to be playing some other sport. But if you're at a college level, recruited level player in another sport, maybe that's something that you'd want to put on there. That's about all I want to say on that. Now, another question came in and says, I noticed an instance where EP shows incorrect current team. Okay, so a couple things. Yes, it can be incorrect, and let me jump back into the page. It can be incorrect on players. Let's see, I'll pull up, I'm going to show you some other things here before we get off. Let's see. Now, on Jack Hughes, it wouldn't work, but if you noticed, if you noticed on the last guy we had up, we had Owen Power up. Let me see if I can get back to Owen, and I'll show you an example. I'm running a little slow here. I want to go back one more screen. I'll tell you while I'm looking for this. But if you look at Owen Power, it's incorrect right now because it's got his University of Michigan team on there. He hasn't played at Michigan yet, but it's listed him under Michigan. So usually the incorrectness is at the beginning of the season because players sometimes are still under the you'll see this in juniors all the time. And if this is what you're talking about, Peter, is a junior player, it will probably about 30% of the time it'll be off. Sometimes you list, like I know a player that's going to the North American Hockey League this year from the CCHL. The CCHL team has already put him on the roster for this year because he would have been a returning player. He also signed he did sign a tender inside of the North American Hockey League. So the North American Hockey League team has got him rostered too. So he's rostered on two different teams right now until the season starts and that flushes out. Once the deadline's hit, everything will flush back out in the right place. I don't find many cases where the team is completely incorrect. But if you got a specific you want to DM me, I'll walk you through that if you need to correct something. But usually it's junior teams. Usually it's at the beginning of the season, and then after they play games, it'll come out the right way. Now remember, the other thing you want to talk about. I don't want to jump ahead of myself because I want to get through a couple other things here. So once again, the age, getting back to that age for a second, there really is no age. If you're moving into this and you've got first of all, if you play in the break at 10, they're not going to start an EP page on you at 10 years old. What their profile for you. What that is and what you're getting there is you're getting players that did play in the brick, and then later they're going back and adding and populating the brick information on there. So let me see if I can knock off a couple other questions here. How often should I check it and change the information? So the question is, how often to change it? And this came in from Leslie Vest Dunnigan. I wonder, Dunnigan, was it a Jack Dunnigan? Was that the guy's name on 30 Rock? I can't remember what his name is. Maybe it was Jack Dunnigan. Maybe there's a relationship there. How often should you check it? Every 2 to 3 weeks to once a month. First of all, everything is automated. It's not really much, unless it's your birth date, your name spelling, correcting personal information. Now, height and weight, you can check, and usually, when you're 14 and your elite prospects page has not been touched until you're 17 or 18, you want to give EP a message and say, hey, and usually the player can do this or the parent can do this and say, hey, I've grown, I'm now 6'2" and 235. But if you put 6'6" in, they might want to have you verify that or have your coach verify that. And I have seen parents that have tried to do that where they've tried to add 2 or 3 inches, not that half an inch where that kind of gray area. They actually try to add a ton of information there, and that's not going to fly. So be careful on that. But yes, you can change that information from time to time. Let's see. Regular versus premium and what I'm paying for. So we're not done talking about what the services can be provided. Now, I'm going to go through what a coach would do. So let's say I'm a coach and I'm going to go watch this Mississauga Reps team play. And I'm just going to use this 2016-2017 Mississauga Reps team. I'm going to go watch this team play. So as a coach, I'm going to pull this roster up and I'm going to look at it right across the board. And I'm going to pull up the stats side of it because the stats are more important than anything else. And I don't know why I'm not getting stats to populate in there. So I'll go grab a different year. I'll grab 18, 19 and see if they'll give me stats. All right, so I'm not going to get stats from that. Let me grab any team. I'm just looking for a team right now to show you something here. It doesn't matter what team. So I'll go grab another team that this guy played for, and I'm going to grab his 1920 Reps team. So, okay, here's please pull this up. Okay, there we go. So this shows me the reps, and I'm going to go scout this team, and I want to know a little bit about them. So the first thing I'm going to do is go and say, okay, holy smokes, there's something going on. Why are we got guys that have got 15 and 13 games and then 8 and 10? So obviously There's something here that's a little bit strange. This is either just a team that plays in tournaments or this information Oh, game played. I'm sorry. That's your points. Your game plays are right. So, you got everybody's in the 30, 40 range in games. So that's right. Points. I'm looking over here and I'm saying total points, 23 points there. Now, for me, I'm going to look and see where the D are at. They got any offensive D. And then I'm going to look at the bottom and say, okay, do we have some forwards down here at the bottom? And what's going on with these forwards that have low points? So I'm looking to see if there's anything askew on the team across the board. I'm looking at penalty minutes, and I'm just trying to get a sense of where the team's at. I can pretty much tell you who their goal scorers are here, and if I want to know pure goals or pure assists, I can just go right up here and I can click on this, and it'll pull that up and show me, pure goal scorers, or who's putting the puck in the net for the most part for this team. Now, if I'm intrigued by something and I want to know more, I would say, okay, look, holy smokes, this guy's got 23 points, and let me find out a little bit about this guy. I don't know anything about this team, so I'm going to start clicking on the players, and now I go into a little bit more information. Now I'm going into his profile, and I'm going, okay, no height and weight, that's no good. He's an 04, that's good because I'm looking at 04s right now. And I'm looking at his history. This is his first team that's been put into elite prospects. I can't really get much information off this player. So it's not doing me much good. In reality, another part of this too is I would probably stop right there and put a little question mark next to his name if I'm really scouting this player. But I can go through from player to player, grab information. And when you get to the junior level, and if I go and grab a junior team from the top here, let me grab a junior team. If you're looking at junior teams, and let me grab something I'll grab the EHL team this time. So let's just grab an EHL team. I'll grab New England Wolves, and I'm just randomly picking a team. They've only got one player in the system right now, but remember, that's because it's for this upcoming season. They've only got Jack Campbell. I'm going to go to past rosters and pretend that I'm scouting this 1920. Did I get that? Past roster, 1920. There we go, 1920. That's what you get when you're trying to watch the screen that you're presenting and trying to do it without having that in front. So here's the 1920 New England Wolves roster. I got a lot of information I can pull up here: height, weight, with the hometown, and birth years. So if I'm a junior coach and I'm in the North American Hockey League or the BCHL or the USHL, and I'm going to go watch the All-Star game, or let's say I'm going to go watch a showcase, an EHL showcase, and I'm going to watch New England play in the showcase, I know that I only want to look at 01s or 02s. So one of the first things I can do is I can hit that Born button and pull up their youngest guys first on the roster and look at the roster from that side. So I go, okay, look, I want 01s and 02s. I've got a handful of players I can look at here now. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8 players on the list that are either 01s and 02s, and they're defensemen and forwards. There's no goalies in that mix. So I'm looking at defensemen, and then I can go through and I can say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defensemen that are 01s on this team. Then I can literally go in and start, looking at each one of them and figuring out a little bit more about them. Okay, I only want defensemen that are 6 foot or taller. So I'm not saying that that's the way I would really do this, but, every coach has got their thing. They all have their hang-ups on what they think is good or bad. So I pull this kid up. He's 6'1". This Andreas Matijic. I see where he's from. I see that he's got dual citizenship. I like that because then I don't have to use a foreign slot for the player. And then I can go back and look at his history and say, okay, is he a goal scorer? Well, he is when he got up to New England. He really wasn't putting up any significant numbers across the board until he got to the New England Wolves the year before. And now he got 3 games up with the top club. It just gives me information. And then I can go down and see, has anybody else seen him? Has he been drafted by anybody? Oh, okay. So at the EHL, he's won a championship. He was Student Athlete of the Year. all-star player, and student athlete of the year for the 2 different seasons. So this kid's got an academic background. That's about all there is on him. But it's interesting. Now I've got a little bit. I can talk to this kid if I want to pull him out of the locker room. I've got some information that I can actually run with on the player, which makes it pretty cool, makes it pretty fun. So let's see. Any other questions come in? I want to show you a couple fun things on here too. If I'm not covering what you think I should be covering as far as what elite prospects can do or how it's used, please jump on. Please, help me. I want to show you some cool things on how I use it and how other general managers use the service. And this is coming into it. And if you got a question, I'll stop what I'm doing. Now, if I go up here into the drafts, this is pretty cool because now I can start doing some really cool stuff with this from a coach or general manager perspective. This is the NHL draft. And if you want to have fun, hey, you can have fun all day long playing around and looking at different drafts and different players. But I don't want that. What I want is I want to change this draft to, okay, I'm getting hung up here, just waiting for my system. Okay, there we go. I want to pull up, let's say, let's go into the USHL draft. So I'll pull up the USA. Now, the USHL has the young kids draft, the first year 15, 16 player draft. Then they've got their anybody draft where they can draft anybody that's eligible to play at the junior level. So I'm going to pull up their general one. This is their anybody draft. Is there any way you can see when you're getting looked at? I covered that a little bit earlier, Mary Jo, but I'll cover that again in a second. Your question that just came in. So now I can go in and I can look at the draft by whatever year I want to look at it for. Now this is important for players. You saw there's the North American Hockey League. There's some different draft. There's the NCDC draft. There's the NA3HL draft. There's all kinds of drafts. If you want to see if you are at that level and you should be drafted, pull up one of the prior drafts and just go through the draft. Let's pull up 2018 and let's look at the names and some of the backgrounds. So I do have videos on this about the USHL draft. I cover the top third, the bottom third. I talk about where the bottom people in the draft ended up. I talk about where the top players in the draft end up. But it's interesting that you can pull up and look at a draft any way you want to look at it here. And I can pull it up and know what player, what round, and where they came from. Now, there's other things I can do to filter on this. If I go up to the top on here, I can say I only want to see U.S. players that are drafted. So I can actually go down here and pull up just the 210 players that were drafted that are U.S. based players. Okay? I want to see the positions. I want defensemen, and maybe I'm a D1 coach and I just want to see what defensemen were drafted. Okay? So now I've limited this list down to 100 players. It's just the Americans. And if I want to do Canadians, because we've got a lot of Canadians on tonight, let's make this a Canada night. I'm going to do 56 players Canadian, okay? And now I can see who drafted who, what round they're drafted in, and maybe some of the players are prospects that I had. What you'll see a lot of times are coaches immediately pull up the draft and do what I'm doing here because they want to see if any of their players were drafted in the USHL. Maybe they've been talking to a 17-year-old and then he gets drafted, or an 18-year-old and he got drafted, and they want to give him a congratulations text or a phone call saying, hey, I just saw you got drafted. Good for you. So this gives you an idea of who was drafted in what round. It's a lot of fun because you can see how I just went in. Now, there's other information on this draft that's pretty cool. You want to know where the players came from? There. Boom. You know exactly where they came from as far as origins. Now, I want you to look at that breakdown of where the players are coming from. This is 2 years ago in the draft, and you can see 210 and 56 American and Canadian. Now, the league size hasn't changed. I think it's changed by one team, so it's not going to change much. But let's look at this year's draft here, and let's pull up the 2020 draft, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go to the bottom here, and we'll now I didn't sort it, so it's going to take me a little longer to scroll. There we go. Now you see right off the bat there's much more homegrown, a lot less Euro influence across the board. You're only getting 1, 2, 3, and most of these Euros here that you're seeing here, maybe they're living in the U.S. Maybe they've already got some kind of roots and they're here permanently. Some of these have either the ability, immigration-wise, to stay here, or they have family they're living with, or they have dual citizenship, or they're carrying 2 passports. So there's a lot of reasons. You're going to see that number stay that way this year. I don't know if it'll change next year, if we'll go back to normal or not. But that's very interesting. The other thing I wanted to show you is if we go into the team side. Mary Jo, to get back to your question on that, can you see when you're getting looked at? Not like on LinkedIn where they'll say, hey, look, 3 people in this industry looked at you today. But there is a little counter. If you punch any player's name in and you look in the top right corner, you'll see a little eyeball. It gives you how many times you've been viewed. So you can keep track of how many times you've been viewed over a week or a month and see if there's any traffic that's coming there. And remember, the majority of the traffic, if you're a 16, 18, 19 player, if you're a 15, 16, or 18 player, most of your traffic is going to come during a showcase. It's going to come right before a showcase, or it's going to come when you send out a bunch of emails to coaches. That's when you're going to want to track things. So before I went to a showcase as a player, or if I've got a roster of all my players as a coach, when I was coaching U18, I would know how many views I had on all the players on my roster. And then after the showcase, I wanted to see which one got the most hits. Because if there's one player that was getting a lot of hits, I'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. He got called out of the locker room 3 or 4 times. Or I'd say, wow, I didn't realize he was getting that much attention. Maybe I've got to pay a little bit more attention on how I'm marketing as a coach or helping him and promoting him. And I want to figure out why he got a lot. Maybe he's a third-line player for me, but he's filling a role that a lot of people were excited about, or he's having a lot of energy in the game. And maybe I wasn't picking up on that. I want to help him or say, hey, look, you got a lot of attention over the weekend. You got 25 hits. But usually showcases, playoffs, and you'll also get hits if you're sending information out to junior teams and sending information out to junior or college coaches. So I wanted to go back and show you something else here, and this is sortable on the league side. I can break down, if I go into, let me just go into teams again. And I pull up, let's pull up an AJHL team this time. We'll stay with the Canadian theme. So if I'm in the AJHL, there's all my AJHL teams. Grand Prairie looks like they've got their roster in. I'll grab Grand Prairie. If I go to the bottom of Grand Prairie, what's really interesting is, well, first of all, there's your team staff, and there's your team staff information of their program, which is pretty cool. It gives a breakdown of how many Americans they've got on the team. Now, here's some interesting information. And this is something that a lot of people don't put much emphasis on. Look at their experience. I can do this for leagues. I can do this for each team individually. I want to know how much game experience there are, because usually that game experience will tell me a lot about the age of the team, and it'll also tell me a lot about how good the team is because of how much junior experience they've got. So they've got 828 games of game experience. I would imagine if I went back up and look at there, I'd find out that this is a fairly young team. Yeah, I see a lot of 02s and 03s on this team, not a lot of 2000s. But now if I go down here a little bit further, what's interesting about this is, look at this. Now this is my latest transactions. Every team has a latest transaction. Even 16 and 18 teams have latest transactions. Now, this tells me who's left recently, and I can actually get the date. Now, that is a player that left the team, and he went to battle for it. It happened back in July. So he decided he was either traded or he was going there. Yeah, that doesn't matter. I just want to show you that. Now, it shows you some players they signed. They picked up a BCHL, 2 BCHL kids, and then they lost one. So that was probably some kind of trade right there with the BCHL. Then you see they got a kid joining from U18. They got another kid joining. They had another kid leaving to play BCHL. So this just shows you a little bit. Now I go into a little bit further. It tells me about the team history. I go a little bit further down, It tells me about some other things too. Retired numbers, stars, cult players. Then here's an interesting thing. This is on every team, whatever level you're at. You get the where are they now. Now, don't forget, this is anybody that they could be playing club hockey if it's on elite stat. It doesn't. It only shows you. It's just not the guys that are doing great that are in the NHL. It shows you anybody's. Now you can pull up the complete list, but you can see players all over the place. So to give you a better example, let's use a team that I'm very familiar with, and let's go in here and grab Victory Honda. Victory Honda's had the same coach, Brian Burke, for years. They're a solid U18 program. So I'm going to go into the U18s. I'm going to go into Tier 1 Elite. Okay, I hope I got Tier 1 Elite. Right there we go. And under Tier 1 Elite, I'm going to pull up Victory, the last team over here on the right in the column. I'll pull up Victory. And I'm going to pull up their last year roster, their 1920 roster, because I want to show you there's their roster, there's the team. It doesn't matter who's on the roster. They were a decent team last year, very good nationally, but so-so overall. So for the elite of the elites, but a good program. So here's where their players left to. The players that left from the 18 team went to the Express, BCHL, AJ, NCDC, CCHL, AJHL, BCHL, University of Maine. I think he went to the North American Hockey League first. He's a 2000, I know. And then the Kenai River, you're talking about another Null team. So that should tell you something, okay? Well, first of all, some of those are going back to 2019. There's only showing you the leavings that have signed with programs. So it didn't pick up some other things from some of the lower level junior teams. But if I pull up the complete list, and that changes once the season starts, and there's this latest transaction part changes once the season starts because it'll add more players. Now, if I go down a little bit where they are now section, here's the where they are now. Now, once again, only one guy, here's a NAPHL guy, 18U player, that played for him last year. And he's leading on the list because he's got the most points. But that leader could be an NCAA guy, just players that played for them in the past. And the filter's set to pull them all up from the NHL on down. So you'll see if you pull up this complete list, players from all over the place that played for Victory Honda. And you'll see them from the NHL, the ECHL, and when it starts populating with stats, it does put it in stats order where you can go up there and filter it yourself. Total points, games played, what league. If you hit the league button, it'll clean it up for you and show you the different leagues. So I hope that helps a little bit. So you see a ton of NCAA guys, just a ton of NCAA guys. This is recent players that have played for, and I don't know if it's just the last 2-3 years, but anyway, I hope that helps a little bit. If you've got any questions on this, hey, I've been going long. I've been going over an hour on this. I can talk about this all day long on the filters and things. I wanted to make sure you, knew what it was. It's a database. That's it. It's a database. And it's the purest database out there. They're very strict on what they put in and where they're going with this. It's used by every coach. Okay, if you're out there, it is a go-to for a coach. The first thing he does if you call is actually jump on and look at your name. If you call up or email, they're pumping you in to see where your information is at and what your background is. If you're worried about stats, your stats come straight from the league. They come straight from your team. Your coach has got to handle anything that gets changed. You're not going to be able to call up and say, my stats are wrong. If only half your games are showing up, it's perfectly legitimate in most cases because you're only going to see the top tournaments and you're only going to see the league stats for the most part. If you're playing, if I'm in the Detroit area and I play 3 games against, I'm on Honey Baked and I play 3 games against Little Caesars exhibition early in the year and they're not league games, and we're just playing, those scores are most likely not going to end up on there unless the coach and the manager put a detailed program together where they're accepted by elite prospects. And most teams won't do that. They only let their league information go on. So hopefully that helps. I see one question came in. Remy asked a question about what do you think about the USPHL Premier? Once again, it's relative. What I really think about the league is not important. What's important is it the right fit for you? USHL Premier, just like any junior league out there, serves a purpose. Okay, it has a purpose. The purpose is to move players up to their NCDC level or move them on to ACHA hockey and some Division III hockey. So I really don't have an opinion on any situation where I'm going to be able to be of any help to you on that. That's really not why I'm here. I'm here to point out that all junior leagues have a purpose. They serve somebody. And we've proved before, we've had a lot of video, and you've seen me, if you watch the show a lot, talk about the fact that junior hockey is not out of control. Junior hockey is not growing exponentially. There's not too many teams out there. We actually went through the numbers of probably 2 months ago. You can grab one of the old videos up on Ask Me Anything. And we actually broke down 18s and juniors and showed you that we're not in any crisis here. We're not growing the sport too fast. In fact, there is a little bit of deceleration, especially with this situation we're in right now. There's definitely going to be some deceleration of team growth, and that's perfectly fine. So I really can't tell you that the USPHL is good or bad. I can tell you that it functions well. I can tell you USPHL has some very strong teams. There's some very good coaching, and it comes down to everything else. Where are you trying to get, and can that team or that league function for you to get you where you want to go? And if it's your only choice, it's a great league. If you're not getting any bites from any other league, it becomes a really good league. So it really is contingent on a lot of things that much more than I can answer just in a general blanket statement. I can tell you this, the best league is easy. It's the USHL. Then you work down from there. I can tell you that. I will give you an opinion on that league. Across the board, even with major junior hockey, it has put itself in a spot where it's just a phenomenal league. So unless there's any other questions, we have gone long. This has been the longest broadcast we've had. I hope, I noticed we retained a ton of audience tonight. I hope this helped you. Let me know quickly before I jump off if you've got any other questions. If not, I'm going to jump off and call it a night. I think we covered enough. And if you didn't get the answers you want, send me a message. Even just put a comment on here, and either collectively the group can help answer. Use Junior Hockey Discussion, Junior Hockey Advisor Discussion. DM me. Put something up on the discussion board. Put a comment on this actual broadcast. One way or another, we'll answer the question for you. We'll get the information for you. We'll help. And it's just not me. Collectively, there's a lot of great minds that either watching this broadcast or will watch it in the replay. So anything else that comes up after we get off, I'll try to answer offline. Besides that, I think we had some fun tonight. I think we covered a lot. I hope you enjoyed it. I can do this all night long. I can stay until midnight Eastern time, but I'm not going to do that. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for tuning in to Junior Hockey Advisor. Remember, if you're on our discussion page and you haven't gone over to the discussion group and you haven't gone over the page, go over and like and follow the page too, because there's information that comes in on both sides, and you want to make sure you're getting information from both sides. Thanks, folks. Hey, thanks, Jeannie, for giving me some good feedback. Nice to have at least one person give me some feedback before the night's over. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Now listen. I want all of our friends and family to share this on Instagram. Now listen. I want all of our friends and family to share this on Instagram and TikTok.